Welcome back to Steel and Vance. Time to talk about the hot subject of the last number of weeks, and really even longer than that, when it comes to international students, the impact that incoming students not capped at any particular level might be having on our housing, affordability, and healthcare, and what have you. And also the fact that you talked about last week, which bing was a light bulb moment for me, was ghost schools. How many schools exist here that promise post-secondary education for people coming in, give them a way into the country, and then there's no school.
Well, there's
no
something
class.
like 20% I've heard of students, international students, come and don't even ever actually go to school. It's a way of getting to Canada.
Right.
So it's a problem when we have the housing market on fire and people don't have anywhere to rent and can't afford a home. And so the federal government finally, sensing great danger, thought, okay, we better sort of put a cap on this. And so BC is doing the same. And it is going to essentially put a 2-year pause on new colleges that would sort of bring in international students. And it is going to be challenging.
It's a big
because
file.
It's going to impact a lot of people. So our next guest is here to sort of walk us through what this might mean. Selina Robinson is the minister responsible for post-secondary education. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Can you walk us through kind of what your biggest concern is about some of these kind of sketchy colleges?
Yeah, well, it's the sketchy colleges that caught my attention when I became minister just over a year ago. And we started asking questions around and hearing from immigrant serving organizations, from student groups. They certainly made presentations around a number of items where international students, they weren't being properly supported in their studies. They weren't being given the opportunities to have classes in some cases. And so we did a little bit of digging to try to understand what was really going on the ground and what tools we had at the provincial level to make sure that students who were coming to study, coming to learn Canadian culture, coming to be perhaps part of our economy, that their needs too were being met. And so we've been working on a suite of actions since last spring. And we made the announcement this last week that actually dovetails in an interesting way with the federal government's recognition that there were providing far too many student visas without the checks and balances that it requires. So the two pieces together should help sort of reestablish international education, reestablish our reputation as a good place to come to get a good education. And more importantly than that, we need to remember that frankly we haven't made enough babies here in Canada, and we're going to need immigration to help deliver the services that we need, making sure that we have the healthcare, the education,
skilled workers,
the skilled workers, building the houses that we need, and we're
part
going to
of our community as well. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, we are a community of immigrants in this country. But let's go back to those schools, because as you said, the students that were promised one thing, they got their passage into Canada thinking they were going to get an education, right? This isn't necessary. I'm sure there are some that are like, hey, got my way into Canada. But the ones that are promised an education and then there is no school to go to, right? How many are we looking at here realistically?
It's been pretty egregious, some of the bad actors. They're not all bad actors. There's about 280 private post-secondary colleges or institutes that operate here in British Columbia, maybe perhaps a little bit more. 80% of them are in the Lower Mainland. And there are enough stories out there to really force us to make sure that we are doing a better job of monitoring these schools, making sure that they're meeting a minimum standard. They already have to meet a standard, but we're going to be elevating that standard during this 2-year hiatus, making sure that they deliver what they say they're going to deliver. We're looking at ways that they are required to provide the supports for students. Now, our publics do a fairly decent job, but the privates aren't necessarily obligated to do that. And looking at housing, what are their obligations to these students? The other thing that I heard a lot about were the recruiters that were in the home country for these students and how they misrepresented the school. And so who's accountable for those third-party recruiters? So we're putting together a framework that addresses that. So at the end of the day, if you are running an operation, you better deliver what you say you're going to deliver, and we're going to check up on you to make sure that you're delivering it. Because students have the right to get a quality education, because that's what they're paying for.
Absolutely. But we know there's a lot of concern because even the Premier was saying on CBC, you got to look at the numbers, whatever BC's sort of allotment is, it's kind of yikes, that's going to be tough to cut down those numbers. What do you say to anyone, any of the colleges, any of the international students who feel this great sense of unease now because there's so many unanswered questions?
Well, the ones who are here are here. So this is on a go. Yes, right. So they get to finish their education. We also do have a complaint system that operates right now. So if any students who are watching this are not getting their promised education, I've heard stories where people show up at a strip mall, they go upstairs, they go into the classroom, they meet their instructor, and then they're told, okay, the rest of the program is online.
Here's your certificate.
All right.
Wow, that's terrible.
And so that's it.
When you say 280 of those types of schools, those privates, right? How many students does that constitute?
So that's about 95,000 students. That's 55% of the international student body that is here are going to private post-secondaries. And now some of them, again, really good operators. So I think we need to make that distinction. But many of them, particularly the smaller operators, flying under the radar. And because historically we've had a complaint-based system, so you could pick up the phone and call the, it's called the PTIB, it's the Private Training Institute branch.
Right.
Well done.
You could pick up the phone and call them. In many cultures, calling the authorities is not a safe thing.
Right.
No question.
And if you're new, your language is still challenged, and your family has saved for years and years and years to send you to get
your opportunity.
Quality education,
Yeah.
and then you're afraid if you complain, they're going to send you home. And so there's a lot at risk and a lot to lose. And so it's based on those stories that I heard, and I want to thank everybody who's shared stories with me. There's been Kiran Singh, who used to work with CBC. He was tremendous.
Right, yes.
And I, again, want to thank him for his stories because they really helped to inform me.
You're very
about
available
what was
too, though.
good.
You get props for being available and
Well,
connected to community in this.
yeah,
Because
well,
you do have an open door.
We do have an open
Yeah.
door. All of us in government. I want to hear these stories because then I can act, right? Then I can do something to make it better. And that's what we're doing.
Are you able to tell us what the cap is in BC? How many students?
So we got over the weekend. The federal government sent us what it looks to be the cap, and it's a funny sort of calculation. So it looks to be about 50,000 going forward.
Right.
Only for the next 2 years, right, until we can figure some of these things out. But it requires sort of 84,000 applications because the way the system works is students will apply to 3 or 4 institutions,
Right.
and then IRCC, the immigrant. I forget what they're called, IRCC, but the federal government, in terms of their immigration, they will not accept everybody, right?
The
Once they get their
review
acceptance.
board-ish.
So you know, they've asked us, you know, to look at keeping it to 50,000. Now, another challenge that we have collectively here in British Columbia is that we need more people working in healthcare. We need more people working in the social service sector, early learning.
Working here and
construction,
staying, learning here and staying here.
Right. So we need to invite people in. And so if we need to consider those people as part of the cap, it also makes it challenging because not everyone who comes to learn will stay. And so we need to be an open society. We need to encourage immigration. We need to support people to develop their skills. We need to do it thoughtfully and with a plan in place.
Yeah.
So all of these things coming together means that we have to right size it. And so I'm continuing to meet with the federal immigration minister to have these conversations about, you know, is there room with the cap? What would it look like? Because we have to.
What will the punishments be? Those, I mean, we could talk to you for an
yes.
hour. Oh,
Well,
thank you.
we're going to have to get you back in. You've
Please.
got a
It's
very
fine.
busy year ahead. Selina Robinson, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
What a pleasure.
Coming up next, at BC's most notorious biker gang, the Hells Angels are being linked to an international assassination plot. Investigative reporter Sam Cooper has the details when we come back.
Yeah, this is one you don't want to miss. You also don't want to miss our viewing party. Yeah, we're going to get light as we go to break here. Viewing party at CHEKmedia.ca. Hey, Aaron, way to get in on the fun.
Hello, Gail in Nanaimo.
And where's Harold? There's Harold. Thanks for watching, Harold.
And Laura and Cooper. Got it? Purr.
I got it, Ginger Cat. Very cool. You want to get in on it? Take a picture of you watching us. Viewing party at CHEKmedia.ca.